because of that. This floor is sloping. My dad built this deck like 25 years ago, something like that. And for some reason, over time, from about here to here, it starts to slope. I've got my laser out, and I could check and see right here, I've got 6 and a 16th. But if I go over here, I've got 4 and a 16th. That means, and I know it was perfectly level when he built it. I know that for a fact. It's sinking 2 inches in this direction. So what we're going to do is find out a good spot to pull the deck boards up and then see what's underneath and see what it's going to take to shim underneath them or something and get everything level again. You see, this used to be flush up here or closer to it, and if you had the right camera angle, you definitely feel it, and you would see how it affects the gate and everything. So that's today's project. So the first thing I had to do here was remove all the deck boards. And a lot of the screws that were holding everything down were rotted or corroded or broken, or they stripped, or some of the screws came out, but a lot of them did not come out. So I'm using my battery powered Sawzall to go underneath the deck board, and I have a metal blade, and I'm cutting the screws out, the ones that I was unable to remove. And as I take all the deck boards off, I place them in the yard in a way, in the same pattern, so that I won't get confused about what board goes where when it's time to put them back. So take all the deck boards off, and these deck boards, by the way, they're those 1 1/8 or 1 inch actual size, and they're sold at the lumber yard. They're called deck boards, and they're treated, and they've been fine. They've held up for 25 years. Everything's in wonderful shape. It's just that the ground was shifting, and I think it's just the type of ground around here. It's wet, and the house is there, and it just has some shift to it every now and then. It's a clay, it's a gumbo, or whatever they call it. And so anyways, I make some determinations of exactly how high up I want to go with the new plane of everything. I found a spot where the deck is really flat for a long ways, and then it starts to slope. And so I figured that's where I'm going to start. And after I've determined the height in the yard side and the height at the driveway side, I made a screed, and it goes from like 1.5 inches on one end to 1 5/16 inches or so on the other end. I screwed that down on top of the last joist nearest to the house, and the thickness of that screed, I cut a new like a long shim, 8 feet long, from that thickness to nothing, and I put one in on the driveway side, and I put one in on the yard side. So, and I screwed these down, and so that's essentially the perimeter of the deck with the new plane. So then on top of each joist, I need to cut a new screed. I measure at each end, and I find the thickness, and they range from 1.5 inches down to nothing. I started cutting screeds and laying them on top of existing joists, screwing them down, and I gradually worked down, and my smallest screed was 1/8 of an inch. And so then I had the full coverage throughout all the joists. Everything was covered and ready to put the deck boards back in. And putting the deck boards back in, I start on the side furthest from the house, and put them in line with the board that they were last up against. And then as I went back towards the house, I took measurements to the end of the deck. So I was able to transfer those measurements all the way down just to keep everything in line with itself. And whether it's exactly in line with how it was before I removed it, it may be close. Some of the gaps are a little bit wavy, but some of the boards are a little bit wider than others. And anyway, it was all, it's not like piano keys. It was, the gaps were imperfect, and as I got finished with everything, it's still imperfect, but it's also perfectly fine. The last board had the same reveal all the way down. The first board, everything looks fine. There's no wiggle, there's no wave, and most importantly, the plane across the surface is comfortable to walk on. You don't feel a slope like you're going back toward the house or whatever you were feeling before. It was really kind of uncomfortable. And then there was also a little offset where you walk through the gate, and the deck was it was dropped down a good inch below the driveway, so it was a bit of a trip hazard there. That's no longer there, so it's nice and flush now. It's much more flush again going into the house, so it's all better. One of the things where I was able to remove the old screws as I'm putting the deck boards down, I used those old holes and put new screws in the old holes, the existing holes. But in a lot of the places where I had to cut the screws, I went ahead and drilled new screw locations. In about 9 out of 10 of these, I had to drill and put screws in a new location, but it all really went well. Screwing anything takes 4 times longer than nailing anything, and especially when you've got hundreds of screws to do. So it was a bit of a process, but it was a weekend job, and it went well. I did most of the removal on Saturday after driving 3 hours, and then also during that we went on a little lumberyard run to get a few 2-bys for the screed material. And then Sunday, after getting up and then waiting till 8 o'clock or so, I don't like to make any noise before 8 o'clock, no matter where I'm at, because there's neighbors, and especially on a Sunday, it would be nicer to wait a little bit later, but I got going around 8 or so on Sunday, and I was out of there by noon, so it wasn't horrible. And the weather was good. It was accommodating. It had been a really hot summer, but this is long sleeve weather in the morning, turned into a comfortable afternoon. And then after I left at noon or so, I still had a drive home, and and that's okay. But I was able to get home, and it was still well before dinner time, so there was no panicking to get home, no getting home late, none of that. Anyway, it was a nice job. My mom needed a little assistance. She'd been talking about this for a while, and I finally found some time available where I could go do something like this. And I'm always happy to help my mom, and especially something like this. It's a deck my dad installed 25 years ago, and it's just a deck, but it's a deck my dad built. So uh, we don't want to alter it. And there's no need to alter it, and so we put it back the way he had it, and it's in good shape. He'd be proud of this. He would approve everything that was done here. Um, so that's pretty much it. I appreciate everybody watching. I appreciate it if you stayed this long, and I would definitely appreciate it if you liked and subscribed. I'm a complete amateur with my YouTube skills, but I'm trying to make more, and I'm trying to learn more and improve more as I go. Um, and I appreciate everyone taking the time to see what I have to offer. I like filming my work. I do a lot of work, and I do some various jobs. Sometimes it's the same old thing, which I enjoy my same old thing my regular work, and sometimes it's some curveball things like this, and this is always good too. Anyway, thanks again, and thanks for sticking it out to the end, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care. That's much better.
It is.
So what we end up with, as you walk out the gate, the deck boards are flush with the concrete out there. As you go into the house, there's a small reveal here, which is what there was originally. So you could sweep and everything will go out, or if it blows, it won't blow directly into the house or what have you. But the main thing is, the deck is on the same plane as it once was. I raised it 1.5 inches on this side and 1 3/16 inches on this side. And you saw I put screeds, I cut 1.5 inch wedge from here to nothing on an 8-foot board, and 1 3/16 inches from here to nothing. And then I cut individual screeds to go on top of the existing joists. And then I just put all the deck boards back. When I took the deck boards off, I kept them laid out in the yard in position to where they were, so I knew which one went where when I brought it back. And I started removing from this end, and when I started reinstalling them over here, I kept consistent measurements from the ends so that we remained in line. And now, the final step, which I'm not going to film, I need to go through and put the screws in every joist. As I installed the boards, I just tacked them in case I needed to move something. So I'm going to put all the screws in, and we'll call this one good. Happy Sunday.